Hello! Another week's gone by, and we're back with season 2 from a new venue. Well, same venue, but better surroundings. Thank you to our producer, Ranga, who's actually spent a bit of money, surprise, surprise, on improving our set.
This happens from time to time, really. We should be very thankful.
I like it. What do you gents think?
I think it's fantastic. I think the only man out of place here is Mr. Teetotaler here. But he spends a lot of time in bars as well for a teetotaler, so you probably like it too.
Hangs out with people like us. And we'd love to hear your comments. Please be sure to comment about the set, give us some feedback. Unlikely that we'll get Ranga to spend any more money if you don't like it, but still we'd like to hear what you think. As usual, we're going to be going through the news, trying to make sense of what has happened, trying to see if we can fix the world's problems. Although, of course, we have no idea what we're talking about. If you think we do, pour yourself a drink and maybe take 2 Panadol as well. Gents, what are we drinking? Mkanya, must we ask? Wait, why are you dressed like a nutty professor?
Did you get tenure somewhere interesting, like Harvard?
Or are you en route to become the Minister of Finance?
Why the nutty? Why can't I just be a professor?
You obviously haven't watched the movie, have you?
No, I haven't.
Okay, maybe you should.
Yeah. Okay, I'll try.
No, but you're looking quite good, I must say.
Oh, thank you very much.
You could fit in the halls of these very old institutions of education, of higher education.
Why higher education and not just any sartorial space?
We don't even know what that word means.
Well, also, you're an intellectual.
Yeah.
So I don't think you'd fit into a sartorial place.
No, I would. Peter Uma is one of my favorite.
Okay, are we going into a rabbit hole right at the beginning of season 2?
Yeah,
It helps. But,
what did you put in the
fashion.
coffee?
Yeah,
Well,
what are you having?
Well, okay, let me start off. I love fashion, and I thought as this is our first episode in the new season, I thought I dress up to the occasion, unlike some of us, but that's okay. And
Yes,
today,
people don't dress up for a drink. This show is called Friday Drinks.
Anyway, gentlemen, shall we avoid rabbit holes?
It's an occasion.
Okay.
Would you not agree?
What are you
I'll
drinking
concede
tonight?
your point.
Okay. So I'm having.
Have you been drinking? What are you having?
I hope not. So I'm having a Vumba coffee and back in Zimbabwe, and I thought I start off the season with something Zimbabwean. So that's what I'm having. I love it. It's dark coffee and it's great.
Okay, anyway, Shumba, what are we having? Much more interesting.
Yeah, we're having a blended malt whiskey called Rock Oyster. It's made up of Scotch, maritime Scotch whiskies. And for a blend, what's quite interesting about it as well is that it's non-chill filtered. And it's got very subtle flavors, incredibly smooth, sublime. And I believe that you are responsible for the choice, although we have a sponsor.
Yes. As you know, I work with the MHMK group, and this is courtesy of MHMK Asset Management. And they gave me the liberty of picking what we'd have today. And as you know, every time I get a choice, I go for something slightly off the beaten track. And I'm glad I chose this one.
Cheers.
Cheers. And cheers to MHMK.
Yeah, and next time just remind them to also sponsor the coffee.
Well, I must admit they did give me carte blanche over
so
what to do
happened?
with the sponsorship. Why waste it on coffee?
Exactly, you know.
But gents, it's been an eventful week. We had the Zambian election, which we treated as if it was our own. I'm sure there's some Zimbabweans who were up all night waiting for the results. But, and you wrote something about this during the course of the week. It did get us thinking. The region's got a moment, doesn't it? Quite a lot of elections over the next 24 months. Commodity prices are high, and all the countries in the region are commodity rich, bar perhaps Malawi, and Namibia to a lesser extent. The Western nations are printing money. This is a moment, isn't it? And how to take advantage of it. But perhaps before we even talk about how to take advantage of it, maybe Rufaro, you could help some of the viewers understand why it is a moment, particularly this combination of commodity prices and quantitative easing or money printing in the West.
Look, the West is printing at a global scale. The IMF is also printing the SDRs we've discussed before. So you have this abundance of liquidity, of money, and it's driven up commodity prices. So countries that are rich in commodities like us have an amazing opportunity to actually cash in on this largesse by the West, and participate in these phenomenal prices in commodities, and bank some money and turbocharge our development here. So it's a golden opportunity, and the big ask really is it going to be a missed opportunity, or is this going to be a turning point in our development history?
Maybe that just leads us into, so yes, is it a missed opportunity? Is it a turning point? What do we need to do to make it a turning point?
It's certainly a particular wave, and just to go back to the elections, we really don't care who wins, right? But what we do care about, and every rating agent will explain this to you, what we care about is the transfer of power, a democratic transfer of power. And the metric that they use to define a democratic country actually is a change of democratic elections in 2 cycles. So if you have democratic elections in 2 cycles and there's a change of power, that is seen as a good thing. And I think that we've seen that, especially oppositional parties coming to the fore, because that's quite major. We don't care who the party is, but we've seen it in Malawi, where it went through the courts, and we saw an oppositional leader actually taking over, and we've seen that again in Zambia. But Zambia has a long history of change of power, but that's a good thing. There are some problems that we still have. So Eswatini is still problematic. Mozambique is still problematic. But I think in the grand scheme of things, it's a very good. What's happened in Malawi and Zambia is not just good for Zimbabwe, it's actually good for SADC. I think we need to be very clear about that. And I think that's where the moment comes in. It's if you have those changes happening, political changes happening, what we need to be aware of is, so what does it mean in the grand scheme of things? It means that we're actually in the spotlight. When you look around the world and what's happening around the world, democracy has actually been seeing a decline. So that democracy is actually, there's something that's happening within this particular region is a good thing.
It's going to be a tick in board meetings, in places where people are making decisions. They're going to say, that's an interesting place to be.
That's an interesting place to be, and it's great. And to see that particular change in power, it's a good thing.
I'm tempted to jump in and disagree with you, because I think that that narrative is seductive, but it doesn't comport well with the facts. So, and the narrative that you are speaking to is this idea that free market capitalism requires or is better when there's democracy.
No,
that's not what he said.
No, that's not even what I said.
Because that's not what he said.
That's not what I said at all. I say that in capital markets right now, whenever you see lending happening right now, credit committees, bond, deaths right now, what they've seen in Zambia is a tick, and it's a tick for the region. That's all I'll say.
Decisions are not made by computers. Investment decisions are not made by computers. They're made by people. And when there's good news coming from a place, people feel better about investing there.
Yeah, but so I don't think you guys heard the point I was trying to make there.
No, we didn't.
No, because you started.
We cut you off because you
went on a tangent.
Okay, so I think where I completely agree with Tinashe, the point that he makes about peaceful transition of power, 100%. I think that's important. And there's another place
that's a tick in the box, right?
Yes, that's a tick in the box. So it's not. So I'll go a step further, because you said we don't care which party wins, right? I'll take that a step further and say we actually don't care what the mode of transition was, whether it was democracy or not, because China has had peaceful transitions of power for the last 40 years, and there were no elections. Nobody cares that there were no elections, right? What the key thing is not so much that there was an election and peaceful transfer of power. What's key is the peaceful transfer of power part.
Okay, so I can dispute your assertion. China is dependent, or its growth was dependent on domestic savings. 45% of its GDP comes in the form of savings. So China can afford to not have democratic elections. We cannot, because we rely, especially the SADC region. The first thing that Cyril Ramaphosa did when he came into power was to have this high-powered delegation whose only remit was to raise $100 billion new investment. When you saw what happened with the democratic elections in South Africa, 1994, the single most driver of that economy from 1994 was purely foreign investment. We've seen that also in Zambia and in Malawi. We've seen that across the region. Our savings rates are pretty low. So we rely on the international markets.
No, but there's a whole region of the world that is very natural resource rich, not unlike SADC and Sub-Saharan Africa, and it's called the oil-rich Arab world. And none of those countries are democracies, but they have peaceful transitions of power, and they raise huge amounts of money in international markets to fund their growth and development. So I think, so to me, the key thing is, as long as you have peace, and as long as you have a policy framework in which somebody can look at your jurisdiction and make investment decisions that are based on an macroeconomic environment that's predictable, the money will come. If the opportunities are there, the money will come.
Okay, but you guys are going down a rabbit hole. But I think you guys do agree that there's a moment. And so let's go back to the original question. So what do we do to take advantage of this moment?
So what we need to do to take advantage of the moment is to drive the momentum in all those other places that are actually going backwards. Like we say, there's Zimbabwe, there's Mozambique, there's Eswatini, and Lesotho to some extent. What we need to do is to ensure, and there's a new secretariat within SADC, and that's a good thing. And what we need to do is to ensure that we really capture that moment and we really make SADC a region of peace, because that is very valuable. Despite what Rufaro has said, a region of peace.
But we generally have peace.
I don't want you. Let's avoid going down the rabbit hole, and maybe I propose a different word that I think the two of you can agree on, which is predictability. People don't like nasty surprises.
Interesting that you say that, because I was going to highlight that from the communique that came out of SADC, and let's talk about, and unfortunately Zimbabwe is always highly politicized, so people tend to pick up the political undertones and not the economic undertones. The economic undertone that SADC as a secretariat came up with was that we'll have a single currency. And unfortunately, they then say this is a long-term ambition. And I think that to capture the moment, there's no better time than now to have that single currency within SADC. There's no better time than now to have a central bank. And that's what they say in their communique, that they would love to see a SADC central bank.
But this is not new. We previously had a target of, I think, 2016.
You know, what we're saying, George, is this is the moment. You're saying, can we capture that moment? And I'm saying, these are things that we've talked about, and this is a perfect time to do so.
But I agree.
Right. It's a perfect time because to inculcate fiscal discipline and monetary union, this is the perfect time, because the world is printing. The world has gone crazy. And to some extent,
go that far, but
to some, well, when you look at what's happening in South Africa, South Africa has not been printing as much. Namibia, Botswana, they have not. They've actually been very disciplined, more disciplined than the Western nations. And I think this is a moment, because then when you're that disciplined and you have a central bank.
A regional currency,
a regional central bank,
mm-hmm.
And you have safe monetary system. You find that a lot of the money that's out there. So you have a safe, stable monetary system, and you have a commodity boom. What that means is you're attracting more capital. Like I said, unlike China, we don't have the savings. So we rely purely on external savings coming in. we've seen Rwanda come up and they've raised, I think 600 million. And frankly, I wouldn't even put my money in Rwanda, but that there's money out there that's willing to put their money in Rwanda shows us that there is a moment. And you had the G7 in Paris when Macron came out again very strongly, and he said, you know what, this is a time when we are willing to forgive those that owe us money. So this is a perfect time to restructure our balance sheets, to restructure our offshore debt, and to invite new money to come in. The rates of return in this particular region are way higher. But I think the only good rated country right now within the region is a triple B. I think it's a B minus somewhere there. It's Namibia, which I think is quite problematic, right? Because you need to see South Africa up there. We need to see Zambia up there and Botswana.
Look, I think what you're speaking to when you talk about the region is incredibly compelling, right? But I think it's sadly, and I hope I'm wrong, I think that's a pipe dream. I think that if you look at Europe, in the 1970s, they figured this out and they set up the EU and they set up a common currency 20 years ago, and they were serious and they made all this progress. I don't think it's going to happen in SADC for the foreseeable future. But I think the real opportunity in this part of the world, in Zimbabwe, is for us to create a policy framework that makes us attractive to investment. If something as esoteric and hard to understand as Bitcoin, right, can raise $1 trillion. If there's money pouring into it from all over the world, what about a sovereign country like ours with all these natural resources? If we created a policy framework that said, if you come into this country and you make investments, these are the rules of the game. They're not going to change for the next 10 years, and these are the possible returns. We would clean up.
I can reply to that.
I think we need to go for a break now, and I think this may be a good point to pause. Let's go top up our drinks, powder our noses, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes. Welcome back. Drinks have been refilled, noses have been powdered. Tinashe, you were dying to respond to Rufaro before we cut away.
Okay. I think Rufaro said some very interesting anecdotes.
Why do I have a feeling you're just about to be very disparaging?
I'm not disparaging at all. I'm just saying it was an interesting anecdote that Zimbabwe can do it on its own. More or less, that's what his argument is. And that's an interesting anecdote. But I think what you will find is that when you look at all the economies within the SADC region, I think it's still less than half a trillion GDP, right? It's about 500 billion. And that's still tiny. That's still less than Brazil, right? So it's a perfect time for countries like Zambia, Malawi, Zimbabwe, these small countries, to piggyback.
Are you calling us small? Carry on.
No, we're small. The whole region is small.
The whole grand scheme of things. The whole continent is more or less the same size as Italy, the sick man of Europe. So it is my fervent belief that it's a great moment right now where we can sell ourselves as a region. And the easier thing to do is to piggyback on South Africa. So South Africa actually does need the Southern African region because it needs to grow. It hasn't been growing. It needs the market. It needs that. And we also need South Africa because it provides a very stable monetary platform for us to piggyback on. So imagine if we were to raise money as a region. I reckon we'd raise even more as long as we have the discipline. So Zimbabwe cannot afford to do it on its own. And especially with the free trade, regional free trade that's happening. We are actually, because when you think about it, it's supposed to kick in 2024. The SADC region, this is a perfect time for SADC to really consolidate, to really open up itself so that when that happens, when the free trade actually happens across Africa, we have at least some competitive advantage. Remember, when you look at the West and the East of Africa, they are a lot more integrated than we are. So I think that this is another perfect moment for us to do so.
Yeah, look, as you were saying that our producer is always complaining that running the show is like herding chickens, and I think that
that's this guy, not the producer.
The producer is one of the chickens that I heard.
He's a rooster.
And if you look at SADC over its 20, 30, 40-year history, it's basically herding chickens, right? What have they achieved of note, right? That they can take home to the bank and say, you know what, we are SADC, we've been around for all this time, we've had this budget, we've had a secretary.
Agree with you.
I actually disagree with it.
What have they done?
I understand the point you're making, but actually, I think if you go further in history, the roots of SADC are the frontline states. And the frontline states were united, they had common cause, they actually made things happen. Okay, fast forward a couple of decades, we've lost it somewhat.
I want to stop you there, because you see, the bogeyman of imperial colonialism was so emotive that people who ordinarily never worked together were banded together to deal with this common enemy, right? So today, every side of the country has its own issues, it's got its own problems, and they pay lip service to the idea of a regional body, of regional issues, of a regional brotherhood or sisterhood or whatever you want to call it, right? Which is why over the last 20 years, we haven't seen any significant regional initiatives actually being executed.
I actually agree with Rufaro. What Rufaro is saying is we haven't...
You're his spokesman now.
I'm trying to be succinct with his many points, which I totally agree with. Unfortunately, SADC does not have a good record, unfortunately. But to your point, we're saying it's a moment. This is a moment, especially with the new secretariat, this is a moment in which we should really rise to the occasion. Whether we'll do so or not, the record does not recommend. That's all I'm saying. So it's a moment, and it's a perfect moment for us, for the region. We've showed that there is transfer of power, which is very important when you look at where capital is coming from. We're not a China.
Yeah, but so here's the thing. Like, if we were to pretend that you had a blank check to set Zim economic policy, yeah, what would your first prize be? Would it be trying to build some sort of SADC consensus to drive the region and our country forward, or would it be to change the policy framework here as a sovereign,
so I'll tell you,
drive Zimbabwe forward?
I'll tell you the problem with Zimbabwe at this particular moment in time is that we're easily forgotten on a number of grounds.
Like, why am I agreeing with you today? You know,
haven't drunk as much.
We are in the same position that Germany was when Europe was unifying. Biggish, kind of relevant, but with a lot of potential. And Germany actually chose the idea to drive the European agenda. And the stronger Europe was, the stronger Germany was. Until Germany was the third largest exporter in the world. If Germany had been in Italy or even a France remains a mess a generation later.
Relatively, I mean, when you say mess, when you speak of
in the context of Europe,
you know. I mean, we're not sending the French $12 a month. The French are sending us.
Sure, but in the European context, and looking at France's size and might, it's a huge mess, in my opinion, compared to Germany.
Germany benefited the most from an integrated Europe. And I'm saying the problem with Zimbabwe, I know we're Zimbabweans and we love this country dearly.
Otherwise we wouldn't live here.
Unfortunately, we're a $17 billion economy. And
that's less than the turnover of many listed companies.
For people, only aid is interested in Zimbabwe. That's our problem.
Because there's a good story. If you work for an NGO, you can come live here and fix problems and drive a product.
There you go. Unless you run for parliament.
Look, I think that Zimbabwe's got really exciting potential, which we can never unlock in the current policy framework. But if we fix that, I suspect because over the last 20 years, okay, so in fact, if I start from 1998 to 2008, Zimbabwe's proverbial lost decade, right? Our GDP shrank by 40%, which is remarkable for a nation not at war. Okay, so the headroom, because of self-inflicted economic damage in Zimbabwe, is much higher than South Africa or Malawi or Zambia or any of our neighbors.
Rufaro, there's hunger in your house, and you're fighting with your wife. Do you focus energy on repairing relations with your wife and your domestic governance? Is that going to bring any more food into your family? Or do you focus your energy on your cooperation with your networks and people outside your family that can bring food into your house and actually possibly improve relations with your wife?
Better yet, if you've got bad credit, right, are you not better off piggybacking on somebody who has good credit? Because right now, where Zimbabwe is, it will take us a decade at least to regain the confidence, even within the local market, a decade of stability. Because if we don't, you cannot have this stop and start where you have 2 years. But then if our stability is on the back of the regional stability, so we piggyback on the regional stability.
Is there anything that Mutuli could possibly say to you that would convince you to lend him money for 10 years? Your own personal money?
Not say, but do.
How long would it take him to demonstrate?
6 months.
No, you need 2 election cycles. I've already said 2 election cycles.
Okay, he sustained the auction for 6 months.
2 election cycles.
For me, look, you're asking for my opinion, right? You can't tell me what my opinion is after asking me, right? As far as I'm concerned, right, if Treasury woke up tomorrow morning and said that the auction is now going to be an auction, we're going to suspend exchange control. Anybody who wants to bring money into this country, we're not going to ask them to jump through any hoops. And anybody who wants to ship money out, we're not going to ask them to jump through any hoops, right? And he sustained this for 6 months. I think that you would see net FDI flows into this country.
I'm afraid that a lot of people would disagree with you. And on numerous occasions, you've highlighted this point that even if they say that, what confidence do you have?
Yeah. So it's not about what they say; it's about what they actually do. If they liberalize,
and I'm saying capital anywhere in the world. So that works with domestic savings. So if they did the right things with domestic savings, I can agree. But unfortunately, with international capital,
but you see, it's not just the domestic savings, gentlemen. So if you think about some of the capital investments that happens here, especially motivated by people in the diaspora who are buying property or building or investing in small businesses, right? A lot of that money doesn't come in through formal banking. Why? Because the rate is 85 and they can achieve 145 on the power market. But if we liberalized, right, and that guy in Joburg or London or New York could bring that money in through a bank at 145, why would they deal with some guy in a dark alley?
No, but that won't move.
But they've
if they did a bunch of transactions and they were comfortable, they had like a 3-6 month track record of doing these transactions.
You guys are actually in agreement. What you're disagreeing on is how long it will take. So you're saying change the rule today, and 6 months down the line, we're good for days. You're saying, well, people are going to say, no, well, okay, we hear you, but demonstrate for a while.
Some people will. I mean, look, people exist on a spectrum, right? So some people will immediately be comfortable and say, okay, fine, I'm going to test the system. I'm going to bring my money in through the bank. Some people will say, no, I'm going to wait.
But what if you were saying to them, yeah, we're doing all these good things, we're liberalizing, but actually, don't worry about us. You don't have to trust us because we no longer have power. We're actually part of this bigger thing, and all the decisions are being made elsewhere. Which is one of the reasons why West Africa works, by the way, because all the small West African countries
They don't
have a central bank.
hyperinflation.
Yeah, look.
They don't have hyperinflation purely because of that.
They don't have a central bank.
They've had
That makes them
serious dictatorships, but no hyperinflation. You know what?
because they don't print money.
They don't print money.
I think what
And
you
they
guys are
don't
saying,
have the right
what
to
you guys are
print money.
saying is brilliant, right? But perhaps what's also holding me back from agreeing with what you're saying
Is you've had too much rock oyster.
Well, I think we're just getting started with the rock oyster.
Oh my gosh.
We have
tonight.
plenty of work to do. But the point I want to make here is, or let me pose it as a question rather, right? Do you think that it's conceivable, okay, that the powers that be watch us on this show, right? And then they all have an epiphany, right, at the same time. And next week, Wednesday, they fly into some nice resort somewhere, probably Vic Falls or Mauritius, and they sign this agreement where they say, we're integrating SADC, we're going to have a common central bank, we're going to have a common currency, and we're moving forward, we're taking this moment. Is that, do you see that happening?
They've done it.
That's what happened in Malawi.
They did it before, and they
When did they ever do it?
They previously had a deadline. I think it was 2016.
The deadline for what?
For convergence of currency.
And what happened? Because we're in 2021.
We let them down. Our macroeconomic
Went the other way.
measures.
So out of, I don't know, 7-8 nations, Zim was having a pickle, and they just decided, let's park this. They were never serious about this.
Are you aware that South Africa, Lesotho, Botswana, Namibia are in a currency union?
Yes,
already?
I am. I'm very much alive to that.
And are you aware that
Lesotho and Swaziland shouldn't really be nations, so they don't really count.
no more whiskey for you.
Okay, right. But Namibia and Botswana, yes.
I think I'll tell you. Let me contextualize a little bit. Everything you said makes sense, but I think if you dig deeper, you realize that there are fault lines there. And I'll give you a good example. You had lots of companies that invested during the GNU that increased their capacity, right? Massive investment. They haven't received their money back, right? And this is now going on to a decade. Mm-hmm. And you're saying that tomorrow, if there's a policy announcement that we've opened up the economy, that these companies will invest again?
Absolutely. So, but I think you're mischaracterizing my position.
Hold a moment. You've got Econet that put in a lot of money.
Yeah, more than $1 billion US. Yeah.
They haven't received. Shareholders have not received their money back, and you're expecting them after a decade to invest more. The only way they would do it, right, if they now know for certain that, you know what, if I'm getting money in, if I'm raising more money for this country, it's backed by the confidence and the structures and the institutions of the region. If you do that...
But okay, gentlemen, maybe we're going down a rabbit hole, and perhaps we should pause, let him drink some water. Maybe you need to give him some coffee.
Might be a good idea.
And we'll come back and pick it up somewhere else that is not this rabbit hole. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Welcome back. And before these two numbnuts go back into the rabbit hole, the sit is quite nice, isn't it?
I like it.
I like it.
I love it.
Feels really nice. Feels like a home.
Yep.
Do you want to talk a little bit about who we owe this to?
Yes, absolutely. Our friends at Kitchen Decor, my guru saw that the couch setting was not natural for drinkers like me and George. Tinashe was the only one comfortable there, and this bothered her to no end, and she decided to upgrade us to this fantastic set that we have. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Thank you, my guru.
Thank you.
Cheers to Kitchen Decor.
Cheers to Kitchen Decor.
Cheers. No.
That's okay.
Gents, elsewhere in the news, a company called Premier Mining, which owns 49% of a tungsten mine in Zimbabwe, is reported as having said they're not putting any more money before the 51% shareholder puts in their share. Guess who the 51% shareholder?
Who?
Me.
Government.
Yes, government. One of the indigenization deals done in years gone by. So the foreign investors as well. You guys own half the business. You're the majority shareholder.
Reasonable
Pony up.
enough. Reasonable enough.
And I think that we were talking about opportunities to change the game. This is a great opportunity for the government to sell their 51% stake in this mine to somebody who can actually drive the business forward.
That's an interesting take. So you're saying, okay, so we've sort of climbed down from this indigenization.
Not sort of. We got rid of it.
So we got rid of indigenization and we hold these 51% stakes in all these businesses. And you say, well, maybe
which we're actually failing to meet our obligations.
So you say maybe now is a good time to just flog them.
Yeah, flog them.
And
I
for
would
all of
say
these, there's a
donate
buy.
them.
No, why donate?
Well, because we never paid for them anyway.
But they are.
No, but we have
No,
to.
we never paid for them.
Yeah, but they're ours
So-
now.
What's your point? I'm
The
struggling.
thing is, we never paid for them. So give the shareholding back.
So you inherited a
It's
car from
original.
you inherited a car from your dad that you never paid for. You must donate it.
No, I did not. It's quite different.
How?
Because we expropriated.
But it's
No,
ours.
but some of those indigenization
But
deals.
it's-
Actually, no.
we
That's
expropriated.
so for every business in the indigenization era, in which the government owns a significant stake, the explanation. No. The explanation is not expropriation.
Well,
So
what's
sometimes
the
what happened?
explanation?
Sometimes there was expropriation, but sometimes what actually happened is an entrepreneur or a group of shareholders approached government and said, "Listen, we're excited about this opportunity. We want you to come in as 51% shareholder. We will fund it."
Which business was this?
And I would not be surprised if that's one of them.
I would be surprised.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure that sort of thing happened.
Okay, but anyway, elsewhere in the news,
So, but what's your opinion? What should they do with their 51%?
you know, I actually haven't thought about this. I was just thinking we should pony up our 51% of the investment.
Why
But,
should we,
but-
as a
but-
state,
but
be in the
you-
business
but-
of running mines?
no, but you brought up an interesting point, which is actually there's a lot of money in these
Lying
stakes.
around?
Lying around in these stakes. Let's put them together. Let's flog them.
Well, it requires an investment, and I'm just saying at this particular
Does
moment
it?
in time,
Do you think if they put them on the market, we wouldn't
that's
be
why
able to
Premier
find
is
buyers?
asking. That's why they're asking for.
No, they just
Yeah, but
bring a
it-
reasonable shareholder.
but
But they're just saying, listen, we can't be putting up everything as a
So they
minority.
require an investment, right?
Yeah.
And we're saying right now the government does not have money.
Yes, so they must sell.
Yes, they must sell or.
No, we're not.
Donate to
we're not
who?
donating anything.
Okay, if they're going to donate, who would they
I
donate
think, I
to?
think I totally understand why SADC does not include Zimbabwe in a lot of this.
Okay,
Mindset, the societal mindset.
Let's indulge him for 2 minutes. Right?
Incredible.
All right, no, please.
It's incredible.
Tinashe, if it was up to you, right?
You would donate
And
them.
to who?
So this is the way I look at it, right? Is that I had a piece of mine that I had, and then government took it, right? And then there was a new dispensation. And the new dispensation, if they want me to go ahead with my business, they should say, you know what, that was a wrong thing that we did, right? You can take back the mine. You now own it 100% because it was at no cost to government at all. But it sets the right mindset. Because remember, whatever return I was getting, when I invested in the mine, I was getting 100% return. Now, when you came in, when you bashed in,
Not 100% return, 100% of the
I was getting whatever return it was, I was getting 100% of that return.
I thought it had gone into Alice in Wonderland there, 100% returns.
No, 100% of the return. And now, I was only getting 49% of that.
Whatever the
particular
return was,
Whatever
yeah.
the return was. So it means that I was now competing internationally and I was not competitive at all. Right? So, and that's why they're asking.
You realize that you can say this as many times as you like. We understand it. I know you think Rufaro is sick sometimes, but we understand your point.
But it's the point is
We don't agree.
they never paid for it.
Yeah, but we don't agree.
And why should they gain from it?
Yeah, but we still don't
But
agree.
there is us, you appreciate that, right?
Sorry?
when you talk about government, that's
No,
that's us, the
absolutely.
taxpayer.
And I'm saying
right?
that
So why
from
shouldn't we gain?
From a moral, ethical perspective, and even from a business perspective, if I were government, I would just simply say, you know what, we were never supposed to do this in the first
Can you tell him that
place.
we've understood this point?
Okay,
Well,
well,
you,
yeah.
you seem, well, you seem
We
not
don't have to
getting it.
agree with it.
And I'm saying that's precisely the reason why SADC is not so keen.
No,
on
but
integrating
with us.
Tinashe,
with
I think
Zimbabwe, because this societal mindset. where you
but
can
as
just have
SADC
anything
table this in any serious way.
Well,
Okay,
I'm saying,
we're going down a rabbit hole. Elsewhere in the news, government announces that they've set aside 500 million Zim dollars for the reopening of schools. These are schools that haven't had any meaningful revenue in nearly 2 years, are saddled with huge bills to be COVID-19 compliant, and parents obviously that are reeling from the effects of COVID-19. Meanwhile, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about it on the show. The government gave Kotko 1.5 billion Zim dollars to subsidize its operations. What do you make of it?
I obviously have a problem with it. You've had teachers that have gone with no salaries, and
Oh, don't they get paid monthly?
well, it's not enough, right? That's the point. I mean, at some point, especially in the last 2 years, they couldn't even afford transport to go to the schools, and 500 million is just barely scratching the surface. I think that
It's not enough to buy twin cabs to
it's
deliver
not.
the 500 million.
It's not.
So-
and a lot of these.
So what would you do if it was up to you?
Well, I think my thoughts on this are quite clear, that government should not be anywhere near free education. They should not be anywhere near schools. I think it's high time that if we are to retain any government control of schools, it should be really in the backwaters, those schools that really need government support. But I actually think that my proposal is a lot of these schools should be run at a local level by the schools themselves. Even teachers should not be paid by government.
I've never understood why
schools-
teachers are paid.
Well,
government.
an interesting part.
Parents must pay the teachers, and they have full control.
Do you know that the way the education system is structured in this country is actually similar to what you're saying? So every school has a school development association. So the school gets a grant from the government, but
So let's stop you there. Why is the school getting a grant?
but let's not segue. They get a grant from the government, but from that point on, most decisions that affect the school are supposed to be made at a local level by the School Development Association. Then the government has actually come in and said, for students that cannot afford, they've introduced a thing called BEAM, Better Education Assistance Model, something. So if you cannot pay your kids' school fees, the community identifies the people that genuinely can't afford the school fees, and the list goes to the Ministry of Social Welfare. And the Ministry of Social Welfare is supposed to write a check to the school for the poor kids. And everybody else who can afford, because the school fees and the
You sound
and the
like
quality
you're
of
describing
education.
something that works beautifully in Narnia and other
No,
fictional
but
places.
this is actually what we have, but it's,
On paper,
but it's not functional,
I-
and that's the problem.
No, that's part of the problem. The biggest problem in running a school is the teachers' salaries, and the teachers' salaries are still run from central government.
Yes, this is
so
part of
they
the grant,
pay
yeah.
out. They pay out the salaries, and I think that government shouldn't. I think teachers, and this is part of the problem, right? Because then the central government stipulates how many kids you can have in a class. So you have particular schools, right, in very good neighborhoods who are being forced to have 50, 60 kids in a class. If they were able to run those schools, so Bororo Primary School, for example, is forced by central government because central government can only pay for one teacher per 60
certain
kids,
number of kids, yeah.
certain number of kids. And if these schools had all rights, as you have intimated, they'll be able to run those schools. They'll be able to have 2, 3, teachers per.
But then what happens?
60
What
kids.
happens?
Okay,
to
but
poor
gentlemen,
I think it must be.
let's get into first principles. Okay, let's look at places in the world
sounds
where,
like the whiskey's taking effect now.
where state-run education actually works, right? And this is places
Scandinavia.
like Europe, Scandinavia, where number one, the country is rich, right? So they have the money to pay for the infrastructure, to run the payrolls, to run the operating costs. at a world-class level.
What about Rwanda?
And let me finish.
Okay.
And
They have aid.
So it's still paid for by rich countries.
Yeah.
and the electorate is happy to pay high taxes to pay for this, right? So it works. Now,
It's a bad idea that does work. I agree.
Well, they can afford it.
Like
you think it's a bad idea to spend a lot of money on whiskey, right? Don't you?
It's an atrocious idea.
But we get aid.
We somehow fund it, right? We are not like going out into the streets, with placards. Please donate Belvini to us, right? So if you can fund it without complicating anybody's life, more power to you. Fantastic. But
I agree with your point,
right? But back home in the around here in Zimbabwe, we're a small poor country, right? We literally cannot afford to run these schools. Like that's the first point that I think is missed when people discuss education in this country and the notion of free education is, can we afford it? So
we cannot.
We can't, right? So why are we pretending to, right? Why are we saying we're going to run these schools?
Sounds good. It sounds good when we say it.
And they all become dysfunctional, and everybody's worse off, right? Instead of saying, you know what, guys, actually, we don't have the money. Schools must run on a cost recovery basis. Our country's poorest and most vulnerable, right? We will appeal to the kind Europeans who are giving us $12 a month.
I totally agree.
To fund these people.
Because it sounds good. It makes us, there's moral dominance somewhat. What I find quite interesting and curious when people argue for free education, they never argue for affordable education. Like, why? Why is it they don't talk about, okay, let's make the education system affordable? They always want free education. And they use Scandinavian countries, which is, number one, it's a bad idea. Just like, drinking whiskey is a bad
Or wearing
idea.
bow ties.
How exactly?
They constrict air and blood circulation.
Not, absolutely
No,
not.
carry on with your point.
But the point is, it's a bad idea. And number two,
but even if it's a bad idea, what's more important, we can't afford it.
The cash
isn't there.
What I'm saying is there are many reasons why we should not even look at it. That's all. I'm agreeing with you. And I'm saying there are many reasons. Just like printing money, it's a bad idea. Just because America does it, does not make it into a good idea. And rich nations can afford bad ideas.
Yeah,
that's the point.
Look at the mess in Afghanistan, right?
And that's 2 trillion, right? So rich nations can afford that. But Zimbabwe is a small nation, or Africa, the same size, economic size as Italy, cannot afford
and we are
bad
poor.
ideas.
We need to wrap this around our brains. And we actually don't have the money.
We don't.
We can't afford it. And when wealthy nations talk about universal free healthcare, universal free education, universal free anything, it's good for them. Fantastic. We are not in that part of the world.
I totally buy into that argument.
Okay, well, everybody's in agreement. Elsewhere in the news, mobile network companies are asking for a price increase. What do you think?
Why are they asking? Why can't they just increase prices like everybody else
in the world?
If you're running a law firm,
you can't increase your price.
Oh, you can't.
They're regulated.
Well, yeah, so we have issues in this country.
No, to your point, and this is the point you should have highlighted. Why is it Mtuli can wake up and increase our taxes? You can wake up and increase.
He has to go to parliament.
Electronic, but he gets it. He gets away with it. He introduced a 2% tax, and he got away with it. Why are businesses having to go to a regulator and being denied currency? Because that's the other thing that Econet was in the news for, where they were saying, well, we have got all these payments that we need to do offshore, but we can't access currency on the auction. What does government expect them to do? And I think these are real issues that we have and that we need to solve. We're not even asking for free markets. I think I've long resigned to the notion that in Zimbabwe we may not have free markets, but we're just asking for markets. We're just asking for voluntary exchange between a seller and a buyer. Econet have invested $1 billion. They haven't even returned. They haven't had a good return on that $1 billion that they invested in. So I think it's important that they charge commercial rates.
Okay.
You know,
Thank you for that little sermon. Maybe we can squeeze in
preaching.
one last thing in the news. Zimbabwe. So this is on international news. I must say it's coming from Bloomberg. Zimbabwe is likely to go to private investors to raise the 3.5 billion or 5 or whatever the number is that we owe white farmers, because it looks unlikely that we're going to get this money from institutional investors.
What
No, I'm serious. I'm dead serious.
That's funny. I mean, like, so okay, they can't get it from institutional investors. They're going to get it from private investors.
Good luck to them.
That's funny.
That's the news.
No, look, I think that, you know, on the spectrum of, you know, capacity to make wise investment decisions, humans exist on a spectrum. And I suspect that the humans managing amounts like 3.5 billion exist on the wiser end of that spectrum.
I think this is degenerated levels.
Let's move on.
Where perhaps we should just wind up the show. It's been lovely having you along this week. Once again, welcome to season 2. We're quite excited about the new season. As usual, we really enjoy reading your comments and interacting with you on social media. So wherever you're watching us, please leave a comment, leave a like, leave an emoji, share with those in your social circles. And we look forward to seeing you next week. But before we cut away, Rufaro, have you got some wise words?
Oh, I'm going to quote one of my favorite rappers. And the words are, may the best of your todays be the worst of your tomorrows. Jay-Z, off the song Forever Young. Have a great weekend.
If you can't be good at it.